All right. As of 1 week ago today, Smite Season 9 mid-season update has been live for officially a week. In this time, myself and Jake have done a little bit of testing. I'm going to start with two things that were changed just after 3 days of the patch being active. After only 3 days, support starter items, which were moved to upgradable at level 15, were reverted to level 17. And Sphinx's Bauble was taken out of the game. As of right now, Sphinx's Bauble has been disabled, and they're probably going to modify the item extremely before they reintroduce it. Now that that information is out of the way, I'm going to go into a few disclaimers before we begin. Out of the 15 games that I played, the majority of the gods I played were purely gods that I feel like would work well with the items that I was testing. Those gods were Ravana, Oleron, Zhonghui, and Izanami. Now, I only played non-conquest modes, and the gods that I did play I'm not particularly experienced with. They're all between Mastery 2 and 3, so I wouldn't say I am the best judge of what they are capable of at peak play. But I did do some testing. So we're gonna go through a few items real quick that I didn't test because I just don't really want to play them too much. And that would be a few items that I think are just gonna be very heavy support items, and I'm typically not a support. It's just not something that I enjoy playing. That would be Fae, Blessed Hoops, and Manticore Spikes. There was multiple instances of them built in almost every single game I played. I think there was only one game that didn't have at least 2 people building them. And I definitely foresee them being very popular in the game in the coming weeks. Next is the Magi's Cloaks glyphs. Same situation as Fae, Blessed Hoops, and Manticore Spikes. I think they're going to be very popular in dual lane, and I think that really there's no reason to not build them if you're going to go the protection ally anyway, because Magi's Cloak has such good protections anyway, and basically the passives are just quote-unquote free buffs to you and your ally. So I foresee that going very well. And then next, we're going to go into the masks. So masks have always been kind of a difficult thing in Smite's history. They've played with it on and off for multiple iterations. The most popular one that I can recall was a few seasons ago in Smite, when everyone was using Mask Start in solo lane because it gave a good power boost, but if you didn't fully upgrade it, it didn't come with a negative effect. Now they learned from that and they took that out of the game, so now you start with a negative effect on the starter items. But at the same time, I never personally saw Mask Start as that big of an advantage. It was good stats wise, but for me personally, the gods I ran in solo would benefit more from a cooldown passive or an extra buff. So I would never use Mask Start, but I think Mask's going to be much more popular now, but I could be horribly wrong. But now I see Masks as a viable alternative to starter items like Heavenly Wings or even Warrior's Axe. But it does come with a potential downside that I see, and again, I haven't experimented with these in Conquest yet, so I don't know, but I think there's a downside to them that I think whoever builds them, it's going to be very easy to counter build against because of their negative side effects. It incentivizes to build, I'll use Rangda's Mask as an example. The more power you build, the less of a negative effect you have. So you're incentivized to build power. So you will have a pretty easy time if you see Mask to be, oh, they're gonna go straight power. At least that's what I would see. Like I said, I haven't seen this happen yet, but I feel like you almost have to be locked into a certain build if you're gonna build a Mask. But we'll see in coming patches and weeks. All right, next item we're gonna briefly touch on is Bumba's Hammer. It's completely changed, but as I said, I haven't played any Conquest yet, but in my opinion, I think it's going to be much better than it used to be. I would say Bumba's Hammer out of the two I used more because I tend to lean towards ability-based assassins, but I think that the new passive and the new stats are going to make it even better for ability-based assassins in the jungle. And now we're going to get into the items that I really went more of an in-depth test into. We're going to start out with Jotun's Cunning. I played 3 games where I built Jotun's Cunning, 2 with Ravana, 1 with Izanami. Because of the effect, every time you damage an enemy god with an ability, you gain a stack of wit. At 2 stacks, your next non-ultimate ability that damages an enemy god gets 25% of its cooldown instantly refunded. Now, because of that ability, I'm guessing this is going to be very popular with assassins who rely on their abilities, like the Ravanas, like the Thanatoses, because it's free cooldown basically, and chances are you're already going to build something in the Mage tree if you're playing an ability-based assassin. So I think this item is going to be very popular very soon. And I definitely think it works better than what it used to be, which we'll get more into next, because what it used to be was Jotun's Ferocity is now Ferocious Executioner. Your next basic attack marks an enemy god. If you hit the marked enemy, or the marked enemy hits you with a basic attack or ability, gain 1 stack. Each stack provides 2% increased damage towards the enemy, stacking up to 10 times. This effect can only occur every 30 seconds. Now this is a much better item in Executioner's tree than it is in Jotun's, for my opinion and use cases. Out of the 4 games I played with Izanami, I built this 3 times, and every single game she utilizes it very well. Purely because she's so basic attack heavy and attack speed heavy, it procs so quick, and it just does that damage. And which leads me into the comparison against Heavy Executioner, which Heavy Executioner, basic attacks against an enemy reduce your target's physical protection by 17.5% for 3 seconds, a max of 2 stacks. But your attack speed is capped at 1.75. Now, some people might think, oh, this would be good on Izanami even more, but I disagree. At least for how I build Izanami, I build her attack speed crit to utilize her passive where her basic attacks hit on the backswing, which I almost always get over 2.2-ish. I think I usually hover around the 2.2 attack speed range. So Heavy Executioner actually hurts Izanami, in my opinion. So which leads me to the conclusion and possible speculation that I think Heavy Executioner, while being overall the better item for certain gods or certain builds that go pure attack speed and crit, I think Ferocious Executioner is going to be the way to go. Next, I'll talk briefly about Pythagorean's piece. I don't know, I wasn't too crazy about that, to be honest. I think it's going to be good with a dual lane magical ADC and physical support, but other than that, it didn't really stand out as anything incredibly different to me, but who knows, I could be wrong. Next, we're going to talk about Perfected Rod of Tahuti. Successfully damaging an enemy god with an ability applies a mark for 3 seconds. Damaging them a second time with another ability consumes the mark and provides you 10% movement speed for 2 seconds, but reduces your non-ultimate abilities by 1.5 seconds. Only 1 mark can be active at a time and cannot be applied 10 seconds after consuming the mark. So I had briefly talked about this when me and Jake went over the patch notes for this, but I think this is going to be a lot better than Nimble Rod of Tahuti, because Perfected Rod of Tahuti is going to be built, in my opinion, on any high damage mage with bad movement speed, like Zeus. I did see this a few times. The couple of times I saw a lot of Zeuses building this in the 15 games I played. So I definitely expect to see a lot more of this in the future, because it's just incredible damage, and you get a movement speed buff, which Zeus is notoriously slow, so it works. Next, we're gonna go into the Bancroft's Talon tree, which is the tree that I think I experimented with the most. Out of the 15 games, I played 7 games where I built the Bancroft's tree upgraded. I'm gonna start with Nimble Bancroft's Talon, which just inherits Nimble Rod of Tahuti, which is for every 40 magical power you have, you gain 2% attack speed. I built this every single time with Oleron. It was the first item I built, and in my opinion, I think it's going to be an essential item for all mage ADCs going forward. Because every 40 magical power you have, 2% attack speed, most magical ADCs are building incredible power anyway. And with the magical power that you're building anyway, you're going to get free attack speed. And most likely you're going to be able to cap out your attack speed, so you won't have to buy any attack speed items. So you can change your build to add more pen, or more power, or more cooldown. But I paired Nimble Bancroft's Talon with the ring build, that's typical of mage ADCs, and I was very hard to kill for the early game, which for Oleron is huge, because Oleron is not the best early game god. He really does usually take a little while to get going until his passive stacks up and you get that built-in crit that he's got, but he was much harder to kill right off the bat when he's getting that extra speed, power, and lifesteal from Nimble Talon. Then we're going to go into Bancroft's Claw. I did actually come across an interesting, I don't know if I want to say bug or if it's just there's too much text, but I discovered a thing. I discovered, as you can see on the screen, that in the item shop, it doesn't tell you that you get a shield. But it does tell you in the end screen scoreboard if you hover over it. So that's an interesting little bug I discovered. But anyway, I tested Bancroft's Claw specifically with Zhang Kui. And I think this is going to be nerfed, quite honestly. I don't see this item staying in the game with the stats that it gives. The stats it gives: every 15 seconds, gain a stack of hunger, max 3. Abilities cast within 30 units of enemy gods consume a stack, dealing bonus damage equal to 0.5% of their max HP for every 75 magical power you have. Each god damaged by hunger provides you with a shield of 1% of your max HP for each magical power you have. This cannot exceed 35% of your max HP. Now, Jake, when we discussed this, thought the shield was going to be huge. I disagreed, and through the 3 games that I've played, I continue to think it's not going to be that huge. I did rush Claw every single time, and I would say the shield is noticeable, but I think the highest I ever saw it get was 150. So I wouldn't say it's broken, the broken part of this ability. However, the power is going to be, the power mixed with the healing is going to be very difficult to fight, especially in high lifesteal mages like Zhang Kui, like Anubis. When I was playing, there was a 15-minute game. I built Bancroft's Claw, and I paired it with Mirrodin Staff and Evolved Warlock Staff. In a 15-minute game, I did over 40,000 damage, and I healed close to 15,000. This is going to be very hard to get over, especially for the Zhang Kui solo laners, which are very popular and already difficult to fight against because they heal and do so much damage. This has made them unstoppable, I think. I don't foresee this staying in the game in its current state, but we'll see. And I noticed the same thing on Anubis. The power and the healing was so much more, but the shield barely ever came into effect. So I really think the shield stat is fine. I worry about the lifesteal and the power. I think they might have to increase, instead of for every 75 magical power, it might have to go up to 100 or 110 or something like that. I don't know. I could be wrong, but in my testing so far, it seems to be a very powerful item, and I think they need to modify it a little. And that takes us on to the last thing that I tested, and possibly this thing I'm still most unsure about. I had already talked about briefly the Fabulous Hoops, Manicore Spikes, and Sphinx's Marble in the Mystical Earrings tree. However, there's one more item, and that is Griffin Wing Earrings. Now, I've tested this in a few games with Izanami and Oleron alike. I tested magical and physical. Every single time, I rushed it because, in my opinion, it's a 2200 gold item. It should be either your first, second, third, maybe third item. But I don't think it's good yet. I don't think it's good. So I'll run through. Griffin Wing Earrings gives you 40 physical power, 60 magical power, 25% attack speed, and 15 mana per 5. It also increases basic attack projectile speed by 40%, but decreases basic attack damage by 15%. And I'll tell you why I don't think it's good. Because every single time I built this item, it didn't feel good. And I've done a side-by-side comparison. I've done the exact same build on Oleron in Jungle Practice. Only I built Griffin Wing Earrings, and then I built an item with attack speed. Now, to me, to the visible eye, I would say there is absolutely zero difference. I slowed it down in Filmora, and you can see there is a very, very, very small increase in the speed, but it comes with a noticeably less power. I don't think Griffin Wing Earrings is going to be good. I saw it built a lot though, so that's what leads me to think is maybe there's something I'm missing here. But I'll run through the games I built. I built with Izanami, with Ferocious Executioner, and it was fine, but I ended up selling Griffin Wing Earrings and adding in Odysseus Bow, and it did more for me, I feel like, because it increased the attack speed and it added in an extra passive that just does more damage. And through a little bit more extensive testing, Griffin Wing Earrings on average dropped Izanami's basics by about 50 damage as opposed to building an item with attack speed. The only thing I could see this maybe changing is if you go 100% crit, maybe Griffin Wing doesn't matter because you're going for crit, and it doesn't matter if your power's a little low, but at that point, why wouldn't you just build an attack speed item? I really am perplexed, and I don't think Griffin Wing Earrings are good. I just would rather build attack speed, and I feel like attack speed is more useful than just increasing the projectile speed. I could be wrong, and this could end up being a very good item, or it could be just for high-level play only, and maybe I'm just not understanding the intended effect it has. But as of right now, I would say out of all the items introduced, Griffin Wing Earrings is the only mess, which is pretty good considering all of the items that Hi-Rez and Smite just introduced. They introduced a dozen new items, and to have one that's a miss, not too bad. As we alluded to in our podcast, they did have to already make some big changes to Sphinx's Bauble and support starters, so I'm a firm believer that in the next two bonus patches that are coming out in the following weeks, that these items will continue to morph and change and shift up and down slightly in the power scale. But as of the first 15 games, I think the two big standouts right now are the two Bancroft glyphs and the two Executioner glyphs. I really do think those are going to be a mainstay in the game, and I think they're going to very quickly be a very popular and required item. The last thing I'm going to briefly touch on here, the new Diminishing Returns and crowd control changes. I didn't really notice that much. I expected to notice it a lot more than I did, but there's only like 3 or 4 times out of 15, 20 plus minute games that I could tell that I wasn't healing or getting as much health out immediately. So I'm a little surprised that that wasn't super noticeable, So I'm gonna have to watch a little bit more closer and see in the future if maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Alright, that'll be it. Thank you for listening to me speculate on this game. We're gonna continue to play some games and probably speculate more. There might be more videos to come based on this patch with Jake. Maybe we're gonna go back and forth and debate about certain things, because I know we have a few very different opinions on a few of the mechanics and gameplay designs they've changed. So yeah, stay tuned for more, guys.